Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and 2020 has been a very interesting year with the pandemic and everything else going on, and video games have definitely been a helpful escape from it all, and luckily this year we had some really good games come out. So today I wanted to go over my personal top 10 games of 2020, and keep in mind I'm not saying that these are like objectively the best games that came out this year. First of all, I have not played even close to all of the good games that came out, and I obviously have my own favorite, personal genres that I like. I love indie games, I love roguelites and FPS games, so my list is obviously going to skew to what I like. But if you've been watching my channel for a little, you probably are somewhat familiar with the type of games I like. And also, I would absolutely love to know some of your guys' favorite games of 2020, so let me know in the comments down below. And the one last thing I want to let you guys know is that I am only considering games that actually had their full launch this year on this list. So if it's still in early access, I unfortunately don't count those. And if a game came out before 2020 but got popular now, like Among Us, I'm not going to count that either. I just really want to hyper-focus on the games that had their full launch this year. And early access is great, but some of the things on this list, were early access last year, but they fully launched this year. And I think that's just a good kind of clean way to do it. But either way, let's just jump right into it. Number 10 on my list is Monster Sanctuary. It's a game that I reviewed very recently, but it's one that I absolutely think deserves a spot somewhere on this list. It's a Metroidvania game mixed with a monster taming game, and ever since I played Hollow Knight, I have been obsessed with awesome, unique Metroidvanias, and this is definitely one of them. And it's not only a unique Metroidvania, but also a super innovative monster taming game. It has skill trees on each monsters, combo meters, and uses for each of the monsters outside of combat. It is easily one of my favorite games of 2020. Number 9 on my list is Littlewood, and Littlewood is an indie game that absolutely blew my expectations out of the water. It's a game that combines Animal Crossing with Stardew Valley, but it adds a ton of mechanics from RPGs to make it very unique, and it has so much charm, and because of all of the added RPG mechanics, it just has an incredibly satisfying gameplay loop that could last you hundreds of hours, and that's why I'm putting it at number 9 on my list. Number 8 on my list is Monster Train. Monster Train is a little more focused in the niche genre I love of roguelite deck builders. Ever since Slay the Spire came out, there have been a ton of new roguelite deck builders, all trying to be unique in their own ways, but Monster Train is the best one that I think succeeded in making a game so fun and unique it's truly a masterpiece on its own. The mixing of different clans at the start of the game, the awesome progression, and the fast-paced real-time multiplayer mode make this game easily one of my top 10 games of 2020. Number 7 on my list is Inmost. And there are some games that I think belong in a museum, like Undertale and Gris, because they use video games as a medium for just pure art, in my opinion, and Inmost is no exception. It's one of those games you really have to play in order to fully experience it, because I don't want to just spoil the whole thing. It took me about 4 hours to beat the game, but the experience is something I won't forget for a long time. There are fun puzzles and decent combat in the game, but the storytelling and overall theme and atmosphere really create an experience that I think is a masterpiece that anyone should experience, and that's why it's on this list. It's just an impactful game in my opinion. Number 6 on my list is Spelunky 2. Spelunky 2 is the absolute perfect sequel I could have asked for of one of the most influential roguelikes of all time in my opinion. Spelunky 2 manages to stay true to the original and keep things similar while also shaking enough things up to make you have to relive the Spelunky experience. Spelunky is a game where you have to just play the game over and over and over to get good at it. There's no stat increases that make you stronger over time, and there's not a whole lot of progression stuff to get you to work towards. You just play the game over and over and get good enough to actually do well in the game. And Spelunky 2 makes even players that played the original game for hundreds of hours get good again, and that's why it makes it so good to me. Number 5 on my list is Animal Crossing New Horizons. Animal Crossing is a game that could not have come at a better time for humanity. While most people were having to quarantine in their homes and not be able to hang out with friends and family, the newest Animal Crossing game came out and gave people a wholesome community to interact with. Animal Crossing New Horizons is in itself an incredible game as well, with the unique concept of being in another world that moves along in real time with our world. It gives you friends to check in with and tasks to work towards that came at an incredible time, and that is why it deserves a spot on this list in my opinion. Number 4 on my list is Risk of Rain 2, and if you're a fan of roguelites, you definitely have heard of Risk of Rain 2. I think the game is an incredible roguelite and a great evolution of the original 2D Risk of Rain. The game is so much fun not only for fans of roguelites, but also just for people that want a fun action-packed multiplayer game to play with their friends or just a fun solo experience as well. There aren't very many highly polished 3D roguelites that have as good of progression, combat, and character design as this game, and that's why I think it deserves a spot high up on my list. Number 3 on my list is Deep Rock Galactic, and Deep Rock Galactic is hands down one of the best multiplayer co-op games of all time. It is super unique and original, and it has the perfect balance of gunplay of killing swarms of enemies and exploration and mining in these randomly generated caves. There's also tons of unique missions, and there's 4 separate classes that are all very unique from each other, and there's a ton of meaningful and satisfying progression, so this is something you could play for hundreds of hours with friends and even randoms, or just, by yourself if you want to, and still be having a ton of fun. This will go down as one of my favorite co-op games of all time, and that is why it is so high on this list. Number 2 on my list is Hades, and if you know how big of a fan of roguelites I am, you knew Hades was going to be somewhere high up on this list. Hands down, without a shadow of a doubt, Hades is one of the best roguelites of all time. The gameplay is fast-paced and super satisfying, the progression has a crazy amount of depth, and the polish that Supergiant Games was able to bring to this genre is incredible and sets the new gold standard in my opinion. There is a meaningful story that takes place over the course of your playthrough, which is very uncommon for a roguelite. There's hundreds of hours of fully voice-acted dialogue of all of these gods talking to you and each other, and the theme and presentation really just tie it all together. This is truly a 10 out of 10 game, absolutely nothing I would change or improve, and because I am a crazy big fan of roguelites, it just had to be this high up on my list. And before we get to my favorite game of 2020, I want to go through some quick honorable mentions. Doom Eternal was a really fun FPS game I played this year that I had a ton of fun with, it just barely didn't make it on this list. Fall Guys was a game that I had a ton of fun with when it first came out, but I kind of unfortunately just fell off of it. Jackpot's Party Pack 7 is a game I really enjoyed. I always enjoy the newest Jackbox games. It was just hard to put it on this list instead of some of the other games I ended up putting on. And also, I've played a couple of hours of Cyberpunk 2077 on PC, and I've been enjoying it so far, but I haven't had enough time to fully, kind of review it. Plus, with all of the bugs and performance issues, I don't feel like it should be on this list in the first place. But let's get to my number 1 game of 2020. My number 1 game of 2020 is Black Mesa. Black Mesa was easily my favorite game I had played in all of 2020, and this definitely might be because I never played the original Half-Life game, which was considered amazing at its time. So for me to play an absolutely incredible and impressive remake of one of the best games of all time, you can bet I was crazy impressed. The game isn't just good because of nostalgia or anything like that. In the year 2020, I consider this game to still be the best FPS story campaign I have played. If you have played the original Half-Life, you would love this game just to see how they made it a modern masterpiece, and if you haven't played the original Half-Life like I hadn't, you should play it because it was a modern masterpiece remake of a classic masterpiece. And so this has been my top 10 games of 2020. Like I said earlier, this was just my personal opinion, and there were a lot of games I wanted to include, but I just couldn't because, I could only put the top 10 games. And I would love to know your guys' favorite games of 2020 in the comments down below, like I said earlier. And this video isn't the only video this award season. I'm also going to be making a top 10 roguelites and roguelikes of 2020, since that has easily been one of my favorite genres for a while, and there were a lot of good ones that came out this year. And I'm also going to be making a top 10 anticipated games of 2021. So subscribe and ring that bell like all the big boy YouTubers say to see those in the future, and I will also link them at the end of the video and in the comments and description once they come out. Also, for every game on this list, I have made a full review for in the past, so feel free to check those out if you're interested in getting a deeper dive of any of the games I mentioned. But I hope you're enjoying this little award season we're doing on this channel, and I'll see you all next time.